Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back. Kevin McCullough from Times Square. Glad to have you with us, and also very glad to welcome back to the broadcast Bernard Kerik, who is the former NYPD police commissioner on 9/11. Commissioner, welcome back. Good to have you.
Thank you, Kevin.
What happened in New Orleans, and how were they able to pull it off, and why haven't the media made more of a connection with some of the obvious terrorist, what look like connections involved in the attack?
Well, listen, it's always easier to look at these things in the aftermath and figure it out. But I would say, given the amount of work that this guy put into this and the possible associates that are involved, I've heard different reports that there's 2, 3, maybe 4 other people involved. If that's the case, then there's a real question as to how did the intelligence apparatus not pick this up? How were these guys communicating? When were they communicating? Over what means? What's on their telecommunications networks? Things like that. A lot of this stuff you would think would have gotten picked up by some authority. The fact that this guy has been indoctrinated, to become an ISIS supporter is pretty wild when you look at his past history. He's born in the United States, lived in the U.S., lived in Texas, was served in the U.S. military for 10 years, I believe. There's been people interviewed. I've heard people talk about him that knew him while he was in the service, who were basically right now in disbelief, saying this is not the guy they knew. Well, if that's the case, and that's all real, then where did he get indoctrinated? How? Who was involved? Who's the people he's been hanging with? Because that's pretty important at this point.
Yeah. Let me ask you about the last time you were with us. Well, we've covered a lot of topics over the years, but on one specific time that you were with us a couple of years ago, we talked about the fact that the state of California had withdrawn itself from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, which was a mechanism that you helped establish with the Bush administration at the time to help federal authorities and local police understand and be prepared to deal with terror threats in advance of attacks happening. To my knowledge, that's the only state that has withdrawn from the Joint Terrorism Task Force. But is it possible that such, non-involvement on a state's behalf could launch more attacks like this? It seems to me that there was definitely a failure of people that would have been trying to be knowledgeable about what is going on terror-wise, and the ability for him to just drive into a crowd of 15 people, kill them, and injure 25 more. Something definitely got dropped here.
Something got, you can't say it got dropped, but I find it hard to believe, Kev, that the intel agencies, be it the FBI, there's no indication at this point that he was on anyone's radar. But for him to put together a plan like this, especially if he was working in concert with others, that would really, really surprise me that they missed it, that somebody didn't pick it up somehow. This guy had to be talking to somebody, right? Had to be communicating with others. I don't know. And the fact that that vehicle that he used was rented from the same rental agency that the Tesla truck used in Las Vegas. Both of those vehicles were rented from the same place. That's a little odd. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know. I
that
think
brings me to a different question, Commissioner. In the last 4 years, have we lost a little bit of ground on the fight against terrorism especially domestically here? Have we let things go by that we shouldn't have, kind of being asleep at the wheel a little bit?
Well, listen, keep in mind the FBI's been busy. They've been busy targeting Donald Trump, been busy targeting, PTA members. They've been busy doing a bunch of things that, they shouldn't have been doing. Is that why they missed this? I don't know. But I can tell you, as of January 20th, there's going to be a very different administration in office. And that administration, I can assure you, is going to handle things differently.
If you were to be setting up if you were to be initiating the work to be addressing terrorism domestically for the Trump administration, what areas do you feel like you would want to deal with on day one? Is it logistics? Is it information gathering? Is it somehow intelligence like this slipping through the cracks? What would a Carrick operation look like if you were king for a day and could kind of start from scratch with a new Justice Department, new FBI, and say we're gonna fight terrorism the way it needs to be fought?
Well, I think the first thing that has to be done is you have to eliminate the DEI component of all law enforcement, not just the FBI, all law enforcement. We don't have room for, equity and diversity and all that garbage that these guys have tried to put into these agencies. That's number one. Number two, take the handcuffs off the police and the law enforcement agencies and let them go do the job they're sworn to do. That's most important. Number three, start getting the prosecutors in order to make sure that the prosecutors are doing their job and enforcing the law, not going out looking for, these political prosecutions. That's where we've lost an enormous amount of ground, focusing on political enemies. The FBI basically became a tool, a propaganda and an enforcement tool for the people in the White House over political issues. That's not the FBI's job. The FBI's job, they are basically federal cops that are supposed to go out and find bad guys and lock them up. They haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
That's got to be done, and that message has to come from the new director.
Well, I would hope that somebody would compel California to return to the Joint Terrorism Task Force as well, because a big sanctuary state like that, with no regard for who's coming in and not talking to anybody about what may be being developed there, that's been a very big concern for me since you and I had that conversation quite a few months ago.
Hey, Kev, I got to tell you, that's going to be every one of them. Every state. I would make sure you don't want our agency working in conjunction with your local and state law enforcement, then don't come to the federal government for any kind of support.
Right.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.